when you're trying to speak to others about Christ, when you're trying to speak into their lives about what makes them happy and how living a life like Christ can make them happier, if you're understanding the way they think, if you understand how they process information, you're going to be more successful at getting your message through to them. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. So my name is Reverend Lance, and I'm with Street Bishops Ministries. And the topic today is cognitive development and the ways in which people hear you and how they process information, because once you know that, you'll be a lot better at conveying the message of Christ, the message of salvation to them, if you understand better how they think. So let's start with some real basic information here. At the most basic level, there are about 4 different ways people take in information and process it. It's important for you to know what these 4 ways are, because you're going to want to adjust your message. You'll want to adjust how you speak to them and how you approach them and how you answer their questions based on what you will know about how they process information. So, let's talk first about these ways in which they process it. The human mind develops, and consciousness develops, and thought processes develop in a human. They're not the same throughout their life. And they move through some stages. Okay? Now, as I describe these stages, it's absolutely true that you are in one of these stages. Identifying which stage you're in will make it easier for you to speak to others, because you're going to want to match how you speak to what stage they're in. But you also need to know what stage of development you're in, because it'll help you match yours to theirs. All right, so let me give you an example. There is, at the first stage, we are what are called dualists. And we see everything in black and white, right or wrong. It's where all of us start out. This is true because my parents say it's true. This is true because this person or that thing or the church says it's true. We don't deviate from that. We stick with this. There's truth. This is true and this is not true. And I don't care what someone says. I don't care what I hear. I don't care what evidence there is. I'm only going to see the world in black and white. And when we have a conversation, it's only going to be who's right and who's wrong. And usually I'm going to assume and feel and defend my position that I'm right and you're wrong. Everything's black and white, no shades of gray, okay? When you're speaking to a person like this, they're going to be defiant in the way in which they defend their current position. So, whether someone is an atheist or a Jew or a Muslim or a Baha'i or a Buddhist, no matter what they are going to, if they're a dualist, they're going to defend that position, and that anything you say is going to be noise. Anything you say is going to be noise. And you need to know this up front if you're dealing with a dualist, because it will help you soften your approach to this individual, and it'll lead you to use words to them like, I understand your position, I fully appreciate your position and where you're at. May I please just show you another way to look at things? I know you're right, and I know you're right in what you believe, but may I just show you another way, right? Working with a dualist can be really tough, okay? Now that's a dualist. That's that first level of thinking. The second level of thinking is whenever you run into what's called a multiplist. Now a multiplist is going to be that person that says, who knows what religion is right or wrong? Everybody has their own ideas. Everybody has their own thoughts. And so I am going to, you can tell me what you believe, but what's the difference? Everybody else has their ideas. Who's to say you're right and I'm wrong, or I'm wrong and you're right? Who knows? Anything goes. People typically fall into this, not fall into, but they develop into this line of reasoning when they are in college. Usually around their sophomore year, they begin to learn that there's other points of view and there's other ways of looking at things. And so they're like, well, who knows what's right? People on a spiritual journey will often do this. They may have been raised one thing, and then they begin to think outside the box, and finally they're questioning everything. Well, who knows if Christianity is right or wrong? And who knows, maybe the Muslims are right, and maybe the Baha'is are right, or maybe the atheists are right. Who's to say, right? Sometimes this can scare parents when they hear this, because they think that their child is abandoning Christianity, but they're not. They're absolutely not. They are moving through a developmental thought process, and they're questioning all things. Very normal, very natural. Okay, so when you speak to someone like this, typically what you're going to want to say is, they're going to say to you, well, look, you've got, this whole thing with Christianity. Who's to say that's right? Who's to say who has all the answers? And when you hear them speak like that, then you can adjust your tact, you can adjust the way that you move towards them in your speaking, and you can say, well, sure, no one really knows. I hear what you're saying, that you think that nobody has the answers, and I can appreciate where you are. You always want to use that. It's great. You want to appreciate where somebody else is. You say, I appreciate where you are. So let me just offer just yet another one. Let me fully explain where I am with Christ. That way you can just add it to the catalog of other people. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying I'm wrong. I'm not saying I'm the only way to go. But I would like you just to hear me. I would like you to allow me to tell my testimony and let me help you understand where I'm at. When you speak to a multiplist like that, they're more likely to let you in, because you're not declaring you have the absolute truth. Their cognitive process will not register a statement where you say, this is the word of the Lord, nothing else is true, this is the only way to go, if you don't do this, you're going to hell. They will turn you off. Boom. They'll just turn you off. And they're turning you off because their mind doesn't even work that way when they're in the multiplicity way of processing information. The next level, so we did dualism, we did multiplicity. The next one up is what's called the relativist. This is where people really begin to develop in their cognitive thinking, and they develop in their way to be able to reason and to be able to take a position. So a relativist then is a little bit different, because what a relativist, the way it's different than a multiplist, a dualist is right or wrong. A multiplist says, who knows? A relativist has grown a little bit beyond and says, well, I can see some relative differences. I can see the differences between Christianity and Islam and Judaism and Baha'i and Buddhism and Taoism. And I mean, I can, a relativist will say, well, I can see the relative differences in these, right? And so when you're speaking to a relativist, you're going to want to speak in relative terms. In relative terms. This is what I mean. Well, an atheist believes this, and they really don't believe that there is a God. But in Christianity, we have a view of God as a supreme being. And so there's a relative difference there. There's a difference. A Jew does not believe that the Messiah has come yet. And we believe that Christ was the Messiah. And so there's a variation, there's a difference there. So that's what makes us relatively different than the Jews, is that we have our Christ, our God, who came to earth and left with us the Holy Spirit. So we have that, and that's different. And with Islam, they have, their prophet Muhammad was different in these certain ways, and they worship in these certain ways, and that's relatively different than us. See, a relativist sees things in relative terms. This versus that. This has this value. This has that value. This has that value. Now, at the fourth level is the individual who has developed cognitively so far along that they say they are the committed relativist. The fourth level is committed relativist. This person, when you speak to them, they will be firmly they have firmly accepted, they're committed to one particular thought, yet they are open to experience and understand all the other thoughts. They find relative differences in religions, right? Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, Baha'ism, the rest. They'll find relative differences, or even in atheism, yet they are firmly committed to one. So this might be the Christian who says, I'm a Christian, my revelation is through Jesus Christ, I believe in the Trinity, I believe that God is supreme, Christ was God, is God, walked on earth, died and rose, and that the Holy Spirit resides with us now as the Comforter. That's what I believe, that's what I follow, that's what I pray. But I'm completely open to the relative value of the other religions or even atheism. The committed relativist is secure in their Christianity, yet they are open to all the others. Not that they're going to the next day switch. In fact, it's just the opposite. They're pretty rooted. They're pretty rooted in theirs. So even if they're a committed Jew or a committed Muslim or a committed atheist, they are mature enough that they're going to be able to speak to you about Christianity. They're going to want to know more about it. They'll want to hear what your testimony is. They're going to want to hear a lot about Christianity, and they'll enjoy hearing it, and they'll take it all in, and they'll have no doubt that it's as real as anything else. Yet they're pretty rooted, they're committed to where they are in their religious walk. So you can see in these four different ways of thought, it starts with the dualist, black and white, tell me what's right, tell me what's wrong, it's the only thing I want to believe. And if you don't believe what I believe, if you don't believe what my mom told me, then it ain't nothing. Then the next level is the multiplist. Who knows? Who knows what the answers are? I mean, everything is up for grabs. There's no truth. It's all just people's opinion, and everyone has an opinion, and you may have one, but I'm not sure I want to hear it. Third one up is the relativist. Well, I can see some relative value. I can see the value differences between Christianity and Islam and Judaism and Baha'ism and Taoism and atheism. Okay, I can see those differences, and so you talk to them in a certain way. And then the fourth level is a person who's the committed relativist. This may seem very confusing at first, but when you watch this video a couple times, and as you speak to people, and as you listen to them, as you hear them, that's why I speak 5% of the time, listen 95% of the time. As you hear them speak, you're going to begin to see the patterns in the way people speak, and you're going to be able to identify where are they in their cognitive development. Once you know where they are in their cognitive development, then as you're evangelizing to them, you can connect with them and speak to them in terms that they can understand. Okay? You'll understand why the dualist just doesn't want to hear anything other than what they believe. You'll understand why the multiplist says, who says you're right? You could be right, you could be wrong. You can't be offended by that, and you can't think that they're blowing you off. They're just thinking out loud how they think. And the relativist is going to say, well, I think Christianity's got some, important value points. And then the committed relativist is going to say, well, I am this, and I value where you are. Please tell me more. Okay? So we could talk more about this in the chat rooms and in email conversations, but this is really important that you get your mind around this, that these four ways of thinking, and I didn't go into the fifth one, no need to go there. And what you'll find is that even as people develop in crises, when they're pushed up against the wall, they will revert downward. So someone who's very secure in what they believe, if they're in a crisis or something's going on and it's hitting the hierarchy, Maslow's hierarchy needs at the bottom, their safety needs, or if they feel like they're under attack, they'll come down to black and white or multiplistic as a defense mechanism. That's why when you're evangelizing with people, when you're telling about Christ, when you're telling about the way you live and what makes you happy, you need to be non-threatening. Because once you get threatening with people, once you really want to absolutely declare that you're right and they're wrong, they're going to turn you off. They're going to shut you down. They're going to go to their base dualism and say, I'm right, you're wrong, goodbye. So learn how to speak to people in the way in which they think. Dualist, multiplist, relativist, committed relativist. And once you learn those, and once you learn, when you're speaking to somebody, within 3 or 4 minutes, you will be able to nail exactly where they are in their development. You're going to be able to nail where they are in their development. Now, if you're a dualist, you're going to have a little bit of a hard time with this because you can only fake it up half a step. So let's hope that you're a little bit further along in your development, and I'll even challenge you to become further along in your development. Okay? That's a lot to take in. Please be sure to email me with your questions. And the camera falls at the very end. Oh my goodness gracious. Okay, so let me finish this up. Camera falls right at the end, and that's fine because life is sure unexpected. Let me know what your questions are. Go to streetbishops.com. If you need some help with your ministry, be sure to email and ask us, and make sure you subscribe to this channel. And God bless you, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.